You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, session cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific exposed data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation that fits seamlessly into existing incident response frameworks. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show.
Hi, my name is Mark Nunnikhoven, and I'm the Distinguished Cloud Strategist at Lacework. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and I'm of the age when computers were just becoming a thing. And we were fortunate enough that my father was in the military, and he saw the computer revolution coming and got a old Commodore 128 for the family. And from the moment that entered, it sort of crossed the threshold, I fell in love with it. I loved tinkering with it, programming it, pushing it to its limits. So I knew for a very long time that I wanted to do something with computers, and what that was changed depending on sort of the year, but it was always around computing. Back in the day, as you remember, but some of the listeners might not, computers were not nearly as polished. The interface was a basic language interpreter. So you were programming right out of the gate, and sure, when you're little, you're just, using pre-made programs. But very quickly, my father took me to some local user groups, and, there was great magazines at the time where you're typing in code. And once I started to see that, hey, I could kind of bend this machine to my will, set me on a path. And so I was doing a lot of self-driven learning around programming through my teenage years. Started with my first job when I was 15. Working for Bell Northern Research on a high school co-op, and then a contract after that, doing testing and some light programming on what eventually became a set-top box for cable television, of all things. I had a lot of turbulent times on the personal side of things through high school, which I actually ended up dropping out of high school a couple of times. Eventually graduated, but same thing with university and college. I kicked around a little bit. I did 1 year of what would be junior college in the US, and then 1 year of university, but the college was in computer programming. University was actually in cognitive science for the first year, which I really, really loved, but I didn't finish either of them. At the time I was working, I was actually doing sales for IBM, and that was going well. I'm not really learning a ton in the first year courses because I've had this self-interest for so long. And I just kind of ended up just staying in the working world from then on out, though eventually I did go back to school later on in life. From sales at IBM, I went into the Canadian federal government, and I spent a little over a decade with the Canadian federal government. And as much as there are challenges in a large bureaucracy, it was fantastic from the security experience, and that's really when things started to veer into the security world. I had some experience. Obviously, I've been developing and writing code for a long time, but when I got into the government, there was, you're legally mandated to pay attention to security, which is a wonderful thing for a security practitioner looking back at it. I don't have to convince them. They have to care. And so I spent a decade there in a bunch of different roles. And the wonderful thing about the Canadian public service is that once you're in, it's easy enough to bounce around from role to role. So I spent some time in service delivery, in platform architecture, in security policy, and about halfway through, I actually went back to school. And instead of going back to get a bachelor's, I went into a graduate program to get a master's in cybersecurity. When I finished my master's, so that information security degree, I specialized in forensics. And so I was starting to do a lot of attack analysis. And of course, if you're defending a nation state, you're seeing a lot of really in-depth, crazy attacks in a good way. Well, at least a good way if you defend against them. And a lot of interesting scenarios and sort of just a breadth of experience that I think would be really hard to replicate in a private company or organization. I just loved it because there was always something new to learn. And that's really what's driven me throughout my career is finding an opportunity where I can keep learning. A good friend of mine called me and said, like, hey, I've got a good opportunity that I think you'd be really interested in here at Trend Micro. I sat down with my friend and we had a good chat. It's not that common to leave the public service once you're in it, but the opportunity was too good to pass up. I was going to be able to help build Trend Micro's cloud business out, and it was eye-opening, to say the least. But just the cultural dynamic of going from a public service where it's a series of lifetime employees, people rarely leave, to the private sector where we're concerned about how much business, what's the revenue, what's the projections, we have customers that we need to keep happy. It was very, very different, but very positive in that difference. What we're doing here at Lacework, and for me, what really got me is he said sort of the magic words. He said, we're looking at how to automate cloud security, and we're looking at how to leverage data, a lot of data. And being a nerd at heart, loving computers from an early age and loving math from an early age, I'm like, okay, there is a lot of cool stuff that we can do with that, especially trying to drive that automation. And I've long felt part of the reason for moving out of the public service was that the cloud is an enabler to do security in a much more modern way. For me, that really comes down to two really simple things. Did I learn something new? And did I share something to help somebody else learn something new? And that's really what drives me day after day. And whether that's helping somebody on a team here at Lacework, or whether that's sharing something out on social, or making a video, or writing something up, or, teaching a course. And the dark days happen, especially over the last year and a half, I think, for all of us. Dark days tend to be where I'm meeting to meeting and, nothing's going right. But what gets me out of those days normally is I will try to carve out 15 to 20 minutes for myself and read a novel. If I can help someone understand something a little bit better, if I can provide some clarity, and if I can do that consistently over the course of my career, I think that's really what I'm looking for. I know I've taught a number of courses and continue to teach. As much as it's small, when you can explain a problem that someone's stuck on or help them reason through a challenge, the reward you get from that, I think, is more than rewarding enough. And if I can keep doing that every day, that's going to add up to a really fulfilling career for me.
This episode is brought to you by Palo Alto Networks, the leader in cybersecurity. As AI-driven attacks increase, organizations can't afford to have network security that's stuck in the past. Discover how Palo Alto Networks can help you predict what's coming and proactively secure against it with a zero-trust, AI-powered network security platform built to secure whatever, whenever, wherever. To learn more, visit paloaltonetworks.com/network security platform.